Still on electricity tariff increase, manufacturers and organized labor have strongly opposed the Nigerian government's decision to increase electricity tariffs by 240% for users enjoying a 20-hour power supply. They have emphasized the importance of maintaining electricity subsidies, cautioning that removing them could lead to the closure of manufacturing businesses and exacerbate inflation. The subsidy on electricity has been entirely removed from the tariff applicable to power consumers in the Band A category, constituting approximately 15% of the total number of power users nationwide. The government announced the tariff hike during a press briefing held by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, in Abuja on Wednesday. Under the new arrangement, affected consumers will now be required to pay a tariff of 225 naira per kilowatt hour, a significant increase from the previous rate of 68 naira kilowatt per hour, representing approximately 240% rise. And now to discuss this further with us, we are joined by Temitope Kolade, who's a senior manager and lead ESG climate change services at Andersen, and he joins us from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Well, let's get started very quickly, and many thanks for coming on and joining us today. I'm just going to go right into it. What factors have led to the approval of an increase in electricity tariff, specifically for customers under the Band A classification by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission? And how do these factors align with the current energy market dynamics that we see in Nigeria?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that question. Apparently, for us to have any review at any point of what the energy tariff is in Nigeria, there is the MITO, which is a multi-year tariff order that's typically is responsible for the review of whatever tariff that we're having. And the MITO is basically an incentive-based regulation that seeks to reward performance above certain thresholds, basically saying that customers would only be charged for as much service that they get. And of course, the discos that do very well in also providing power to the people would have this sort of remuneration that they get, essentially because there is the need to have some fair return on capital for the investors. And of course, the return of capital in itself, so that they can recoup the capital they have used in putting the assets in place over a number of years, and then to also be able to recover efficiently the operating costs and overhead. So that's basically what it is. But then the point would then be, can everyone afford it at the rates they would want people to get it, in trying to get back whatever their investment is, which is why customers are then categorized into different bands and say, oh, you know what, I'm going to give you power for this number of hours, and you're going to pay more if you're getting it for more than the number of hours. Apparently, when you then talk about the factors with respect to the current energy market dynamics in Nigeria, the price of gas has just increased, and that also means that these generators of power would have to recoup more of their investment as they put in more, because that means it has some more cost of sales for them. They've got to expense more into gas to ensure that they provide power to the people. And not to say the obvious, is to say that, I mean, power is also one of those commodities that are being subsidized by government. And so that's why we're seeing what we're seeing today in Nigeria.
So what then would now be the implications? Implications as to, does the approved increase in electricity tariff from 66 naira to 225 naira per kilowatt hour for customers under Band A have for household budgets and consumer spending patterns, right? We have to look at the economics, particularly considering that Band A customers enjoy 20 hours of electricity supply daily. So if you have manufacturers who are under that band as well, and also companies there, people who have services and products, and also homes as well, we've seen a high and very uncertain times in our economy. I mean, you would agree with me as regards to that. Inflationary numbers month on month, when you look at the numbers on food as well. What would then happen when you look at the indices if this happens in terms of implications?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Number one thing that you would see is the impact on savings. There will be less to save for households, for instance. You would imagine also that disposable income will reduce because people in band A, for instance, would have to consume more in power. For those who were spending, say, maybe 50,000 in a month, they would have to spend at least about 150,000 naira in a month to ensure that they continue to enjoy the same power they enjoyed before. And the other side of things is that there will be changing consumption patterns for some persons. Some people would have to redistribute their income and say, you know what, I'm not going to take that much again. And it could even lead to potential economic slowdown for some people, especially those who use it to manufacture. And it has some other social implications, for instance, where you'd have that inequality and that widening gap between the rich and the poor. So these are some of the implications that we should expect for this sort of move. We can only hope that maybe there will be some caution somewhere to minimize the impact on households and the manufacturers and the economy at large.
Right. I mean, in recent times, we've seen the grid collapse so many times, with the TCNs always complaining about, transmission, and there's always some apology from their social media handles apologizing for the blackouts that we've seen. I mean, just recently, was it last week, we had a nationwide blackout, and every time we're going into the rainy season, so of course there are going to be lots of blackouts to think about that. But could you provide a bit of insight into the category used by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to sort of classify customers into different bands, right? And what measures are in place to ensure that customers really are receiving the required hours of electricity supply as per their classification? Because 20 hours in Nigeria? Yeah, it's a lot to ask.
Yeah, it does happen in some places, but I can imagine that there are times that we have those exceptions. So particularly to classify customers, they will look at the consumption levels. Are these people able to afford, which is, like, for me, the bottom line when you think about what factors are bedeviling the power sector in Nigeria, is that of affordability, revenue assurance, because the discos are not always sure that they would get what they provided to the people in terms of compensation. They also have to then do that classification. The voltage levels is yet another thing. You want to get the right supply in terms of voltage. And then the customer type also, whether they're residential, commercial, industrial, based on that, they are placed into different bands. And of course, geographical location. Some people, because of the places they live, they're able to pay for more. But when we then think about what are the factors to ensure that people really get 20 hours, for instance, there is monitoring and enforcement that NERC is supposed to do. And one of the things that we've heard in the report as laid out earlier is that going forward, we would also have some technology innovation into ensuring that there is some monitoring that is done remotely, and you can easily flag whether people are really getting what they deserve or they're not getting it. There should be penalties for non-compliance. So it also means that we should expect that customers would complain using the right channels of customer complaint mechanisms. And of course, the discos should be penalized if they default in ensuring that they fulfill their part of the bargain.
Compliance is one thing that we're yet to see when it comes to consumer protection in Nigeria. But Temitope, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you for doing this with us.
Thank you very much for having me.